For the past several days, you've been traveling a road that winds lazily across the rolling grasslands of the green fields. Sundown is approaching when you top a rise and see the town of Greenest just a few short miles away. But instead of the pleasant, welcoming town you expected, you see columns of black smoke rising over the burning buildings, running figures that are little more than dots at this distance. In a winged, wheeling shape, low over the keep, that rises above the center of the town. Green Nest is being attacked by a dragon. Hello, humans. I am Joe, and over the past few months now, I have been running Tyranny of Dragons, which is like I think it's the first official of the D&D 5th edition campaign modules. So I've been running that for a group of friends, and I figured that it would be useful for me to kind of recap my experience. We finished Hoard of the Dragon Queen, which is the first half of it. It's broken up into two chunks. Hoard of the Dragon Queen takes you from level 1 to about level 8, and then Rise of Tiamat is the actual showdown with Tiamat and conclusion of the adventure, which is what I'm about to start running now. So I figured I finished Hoard the Dragon Queen. It might be good for me to summarize this, just to make sure I know what all the stuff that's happened is going into the second half. And also might be helpful for any of my players who decide to watch. They can watch this and be like, oh, that's what the DM was thinking when he was talking about this section. There's some stuff that maybe we didn't understand, or there's stuff that they did understand, but they need to be reminded of because it's been a few months. And also, hopefully, this would be helpful for whoever is watching this. You can learn from my mistakes. You can say, hey, Joe did these things and it didn't work out very well, and these are things that you can do differently, or these are things that I did that worked. And not that I'm very clever, it's just that I happen to think of it. And then you can take that and then you can run that for your party, and they'll think that, oh, wow, that's so good. That works out so much better. So I hopefully this will be helpful for everyone involved. And I'm going to summarize everything from Heart of the Dragon Queen now, and then I'll go back through, or I'll continue to go through over the future. In the future, I'm going to go through and do an episode by episode for each week of Rise of Tiamat, doing all the updates of the new things that are happening. And we'll do kind of not exactly a play by play, but giving you the broad strokes. Tyranny of Dragons takes place in the Forgotten Realms, which is like the standard D&D 5e, especially fantasy setting. It's just like kitchen sink fantasy. You got your Western medieval stuff, but you've also got monks and you've got artificers and you've got werewolves and vampires from Gothic horror and you've got Lovecraftian horror elements. But Tyranny of Dragons is a very like classically, I think the core of it is a very classically Western medieval fantasy idea. Right? You got the Cult of the Dragon, who are trying to summon Tiamat from the Nine Hells. Tiamat is the goddess of all evil dragons. She is the like quintessential evil dragon. She's based off of like a Mesopotamian dragon monster deity kind of thing. So the idea is that Tiamat, leader of the evil dragons, she's being summoned from hell, literally, and the heroes have to stop her before it's too late, basically. So we take a bunch of random schmucks, level 1, which level 1 is basically these people were farmers or performers or scholars of no description of particular importance 3 days ago. We take those people and they're going to eventually be the ones who have to fight a god. We take these level 1 adventures, they're going to end up at level 8, which by level 8 you're like a notable hero. You're a hero of the kingdom, where people would actually like call on you intentionally to look for help. You know by level 8 you're probably in the realm of like an Odysseus or an Achilles, for those of you who are fans of Greek mythology. So we start off, as I read off that little opening blurb, you start off as the party for whatever reasons. You can figure that out backstory wise with your players. I'll go into the details as it becomes relevant for recapping. I won't bitch bore you with all of it right now, but the party is adventuring. For whatever reason, they're traveling to the town of Greenest, which is an area in the Green Fields, and the Green Fields is a region in the Forgotten Realms that is like not all that impressive. It's just kind of the boring, low-level starting adventure. It's the Hyrule Field. It's the Hyrule Field of the Sword Coast, basically. And they're traveling to this town, and the town is being attacked by a dragon. So of course they run in, and they go through what's called the first chapter in the book is the Siege of Greenest, where they have to help the local people basically fight off these dragons and the dragon cult who are ransacking the town, looting everything that isn't bolted down, burning all the buildings, killing all the people. Um, which it's fine. I mean, it's fine stuff. The one thing you need to take note of is that you're at level 1, and basically any combat encounter has the chance to be a TPK. I found that from the first combat counter where like basically everyone almost died fighting like two or three kobolds and a couple cultists. Just like, okay, you got into one fight and this is an existential threat, but hey, you did save those random townsfolk, so you should feel good about yourselves. So you save some townsfolk, you get to the keep, and then you talk to the governor, you start coordinating an assault. I was a little confused reading the book, and I decided to give the players their first level up right there, which I think is actually the right call. I don't think that's how you're intended to play this, but I think that is the right call. Because then they're level 2, they are a little bit more beefy. They can take a couple hits without immediately being destroyed by anything, and you don't have them constantly begging for a long rest every 5 minutes because they're dying. So then, you go through a few events, helping people out, saving the windmill, basically getting some rapport with the townsfolk. End of that process, there's a climatic final battle with like one of the leaders. You have a duel, a one-on-one duel between a blue dragonborn and either one of the party members or someone in the guard will volunteer. One of my party members did. It's his name. The I'm only going to use names of characters. I won't use any of the players' names just in case they don't want that information being put out. So Max, which is not his real name, it's a nickname because he's a satyr. He's from the Feywild. And so he only uses the nicknames for reasons that everyone who knows anything about Fey would obviously know. And I'm saying that very pointedly, but he has a duel, and he loses because it's a supposed to lose fight. You're really not supposed to be able to beat the Dragonborn fighter. It's supposed to be like the raiders have done everything they wanted, and they've taken everything they can from the town, and they're beating this guy down as like as a last display of cruelty, basically. They have a cleric in the party, they recover him, and then the governor is like, okay, guys, we need to take some time to rebuild the town. Could you go and follow these raiders back to their now? Being careful, don't just go in there all willy-nilly, but could you follow these guys back? So they do. Actually, they do. So the party follows them, which the party now consists of. We had a few people who didn't show up to the first session but wanted to join, and some people who tried it out but didn't decide they wanted to. So we have a party that consists of, at this point, four people, and it is very classic party composition. We have Sir Robert of House Ross. You can figure out where what the inspiration for this character is Sir Robert of House Ross, who is a cleric from Baldur's Gate, who was like a former guard and has taken to the life of adventuring in service to the god Ilmater, who is the god who defends basically the weak and the weary and those who can't defend themselves. But like in a very self-sacrificial sort of way, not in a paladin sort of way, but in a very like I'm going to throw myself in front of the train so you don't get hit kind of way. We have Max, as we said before, who is a fighter, and specifically he takes the Eldritch Knight fighter role. He's a satyr. Oh, Robert is a human, standard human. Alora, who is a moon elf sorceress, a former noble from Baldur's Gate. I think I might have said Baldur's Deep the first time. Former noble from Baldur's Gate, who was kicked out because of family shenanigans. Standard, a common trope in fantasy. Something caused you to be disgraced nobility. And so she's taken to the road basically because she has no other choice. And the last member of the party is Nox, who is a fairy, also from the Feywild, and who is our party rogue, and does exactly what you would expect rogues to be doing, which is flying around, stealing everything that isn't pinned down. So great, fairly classic, at least in the class setup, fairly classic party dynamic setup. So the four of them go traveling off, and we have by this point, they've gone through the siege, and we're starting to get some actual. Most of these people are new players, but they're starting to get some inter-party dynamics, figuring out how things work. And because of that, we see what I call a duality of planning. They're following the group. They find some stragglers. They crest a hill and they see some people like encamped inside this like ring of hills or whatever. And they spend half an hour planning for like four cultists and four more kobolds, right? Over planning because now they're level 2, right? They actually can have a fight with these people and it won't be an existential threat. So they spend like half an hour planning and they run in there and they kill them in like one or maybe two rounds, right? Just wipe them out. Then they weren't being properly aware of their surroundings. They're following the trail and they walk right into an ambush, basically. And they try to talk their way through it, but I think they had captured one of the cultists, took them basically as a hostage, and they didn't end up backfiring on them because the hostage like called out to the people who were keeping watch uh, for an ambush, and calls out to them, alerts them, and that starts a fight, and that almost, I don't know if it almost wipes them out, but one of the people keeping guard almost escapes, almost alerts the camp, and then, and but fortunately they're able to shut it down and collect some items from these characters, collect some robes, and they decide that they're going to sneak in. Again, I don't think that they did enough planning for this, despite having just had that failure. So they go walking in, and then they're inside the encampment, and then like the first time they talk to someone, they realize that they don't know enough about the person in charge. They don't know enough about who is leading the camp, who's Fraulein Mondath. That's the person in charge of this raiding camp, and so they're immediately found out. They're dragged into the leader tent, and two of them say, we're basically mercenaries. If you're willing to pay us, we're willing to work for you. One of them is the fairy. She's able to fly away. But Robert, the cleric, is too much of a goody two shoes to claim to be a mercenary. And so he is set to be executed. He's tied up in the prison area of the camp, and he's going to be executed at dawn. But this actually works out for them because that's where they discovered that an important NPC who the governor had sent them to retrieve, a fellow named Leosin Erlenthar, had been captured and was being kept here. He had been investigating the camp, not the way that they were hoping to find him, but they find him, and they have a little bit of a back and forth figuring out how things are going to work before they eventually are able to, as you kind of expect, eventually they're able to escape. It's kind of the name of the game with D&D is like they get caught, but then they pull some shenanigans and some crazy nonsense out of somewhere, and they manage to escape. They get very lucky. They get very lucky in the escape because there's Frolin Mondath, who is the head of this camp, but she's working under Resmir. Party doesn't know this yet, but Resmir is one of the big bosses for the entire cult. There's multiple times where Resmir was walking past the party while they're trying to escape and rolls low enough on her perception check that she doesn't catch the party as they're escaping, and so they're able to sneak their way out. They're able to get all the townsfolk out, and they escape, return back to town, whereupon there's this cave that has obvious quest marker basically floating above the entrance of it, and they didn't get to explore it because they got captured and everything. So they're like, okay, we have to go back. We have to find out. When they get back, they discover that the entire camp is broken. Like camp is broken. There's like a few stragglers who are hanging behind who aren't even actually part of the cult. They're just the rangers who were feeding the cult, like hunting food for them and stuff. And this is like kind of my first piece of advice, I think. Something that I learned here from the way that this module is written is always have the world constantly moving, right? The PCs, the party leaves, they come back, they're expecting everything to be basically the way they left it, but things are not the way they left it. Stuff has changed. The world has changed. The world has changed because of things that they've done. The villains are so scared because the party freed this NPC, and the villains don't know how much he knows. Maybe he knows enough to actually get some mobilization going to stop them. They can't take that risk. They have to book it, right? They take all the treasure with them. They don't take any prisoners. They've obviously gotten all the prisoners, but they take all the treasure with them, and they take most of their knowledge about what's happening. So that makes the party feel like, hey, this is a real world. This is a dynamic world. Stuff is happening. So they go in, they explore the area, they explore the cave. There's a lot of shenanigans that happen in here. The cave is a type of dungeon, so, and this is where the areas where like D&D really shines is Dungeons and Dragons really shines with the dungeons, right? When they're exploring this path, there's branching tunnels that they can go down. They can try one way and be like, oh, we don't like what we're fighting here. We're going to go the other way, fight some different things, and that works out pretty well for them. There's some points where it gets out of hand. They go into an area and there's just like wave after wave after wave of kobold who are attacking them, and they have to retreat. But then they go into another area and they find a place where all the guards are asleep, and they're able to take them out in their sleep silently and efficiently. And they find Fraulein Mondath, and they kill her. They take her magic items. They find some information out about they find information out of the cult that they are delivering resources to some place called Castle Neratar. They're delivering all this treasure up to some location, and so they're kind of leaning towards having to go and investigate that. There's a rematch between the party and that Dragonborn that they fought, where they get to redeem themselves. The fighter ends up winning. He gets to redeem himself, and then we go into something that is my addition, all right? Because there's at the back of the cave, there's a place. It's the dragon hatchery, so there's a couple of dragon eggs there, and the party's supposed to be able to get those eggs. But there's also supposed to be like some generic combat encounter where they fight like some more guard drakes or something like that. I decided to put something fun in there. I like Archfey. This adventure obviously doesn't have any Archfey. It's about dragons, but I like the Fey, and most of my party, they're like two of them are actually Fey, and one of them I thought the sorceress I thought might like to become a warlock because of some complaining that she had done during previous sessions. I thought she might like to become a warlock and get Eldritch Blast and warlock powers. So I put an imprisoned archfey in in the room, and who they don't know his true name yet, but he asked them to call him the Green Man, and then several other names, and they did discover that one of the names that he goes by is Ambrosius. So they freed him, and he is able to basically trick that. He gives them some health potions as a return favor for freeing him, and then is able to trick two of them into giving him their names. Now Robert and Elora are their names have been taken from them by this archfey, who is a benevolent figure, at least in my opinion. They might not agree, but I believe he's benevolent. Um, and then Alora furthermore. Oh, Max also owes him a favor because of something related to the dragon eggs. I don't remember the specifics, but I know he's being indebted, even though he doesn't give his name, he is indebted by a favor. Then Alora takes owes Ambrosius three favors, so she can take three warlock levels and get the goodies that come from that. And that means this is my second piece of advice, which is always have even when you're running a campaign module, you should always have a B plot going on. You should always have some other things going on besides just even if it's fighting Tiamat, even if it's evil dragons trying to take over the world, you should always have something else going on. And that way, if dragon nonsense is getting a little boring, we bring in the Fae, and if Fae nonsense is getting a little boring, we bring in the dragons, right? And you can kind of keep switching back and forth. They return back to town. They find out that Leosin has already moved on to the next town, so they follow him, and then he basically gives them the quest that is the quest that will take them all the way through the rest of the story, right? Like they're at level 3 or 4 at this point, and then they get the quest that will take them on through it's not the one quest. The quest that they're given is go follow the caravan up to the castle and figure out what happened there. Doing so, they get kind of like strung along through a series of different they catch up to the villain, they retreat, they catch up to the villain retreats, they follow him, they catch up, the villain retreats, they follow him, they get like this happens for at least 2 or 3 times. So they follow the caravan and they go like on a long windy trail along the Sword Coast, like past Baldur's Gate, up all the way up to Waterdeep, and then past Waterdeep all the way up into the swamps. Yeah, they meet some fun NPCs. I took this NPC named Arvustia, who's just supposed to be like a generic traveler, and I decided to make her into like an actual proper NPC. She's a warlock. She's like a level 1 warlock who just got her powers basically yesterday, basically before she joins the caravan. And that gives the party a chance to like kind of take her under her wing, be protective of her, kind of gets a different party dynamic. They're not just random thugs going out and beating people up. They're like trying to be heroes, and like that's kind of embodied in this taking care of Rustia sort of thing. The caravan, they have encounters as they travel north. They level up at least once. They go into the swamp. They encounter a bunch of lizard folk. They lead a lizard folk uprising over the cultists who have kept them basically imprisoned and basically enslaved. They lead a lizard folk uprising on this castle where the cult is holed up, and in the process, before they lead the uprising, they're infiltrating again as cultists. This time it works out for them. This time they're able to pretend to be cultists and they don't get caught. Uh, and Max actually meets. This is another NPC that I spruced up. I took one of the cultists and made her Lilith, who is a blade singer tiefling. Kind of, and I did this intentionally. Like Arvustia is kind of a foil, a mirror to Alora, who's the sorceress warlock, and Arvustia is another warlock, and so there's a mirror there. And Max is a Eldritch Knight, so that's a fighter who's leaning towards the wizard side. And so I took this NPC and made her a blade singer, so she's a wizard leaning towards the fighter side. So there's kind of a fun contrast going on there. And they had a thoroughly enjoyable interaction with each other. Perfectly adult entertainment was enjoyed by those two characters. And because of this, not literally because of this, but because of the conversations that they had, when the party reveals the fact that they are infiltrating and they lead the lizard folk uprising, Lilith actually changes sides and saves their bacon because nobody had any AoE effects and they ran into a fight with a whole bunch of monsters involved, and so nobody has any AoE spells and they have no way of dealing with it, because the reason being that even though the sorceress would have been at a level where she could take fireball, she multi-classed into warlock. She doesn't have fireball yet, so the blade singer gets to cast fireball a couple times to help them out. But this is the first this is or this well the first retreat was leaving the encampment. Now Resmir is leading the second retreat through a portal at like the bottom in the tunnel. There's like tunnels underneath the castle, leads them through a portal, like leads her group through a portal in a retreat. The party follows her through the portal, and they get to a place called the Hunting Lodge, which is where the B plot comes into play. At a previous moment in the campaign, I had the party interact with a tarot card reader. They had a fun little kind of role play encounter. But the fairy character, Nox, the rogue, she had decided that for the price that she paid to this tarot reader, who turned out to be an archfey, she would give a piece of her fey essence, which is her ability to cast druidcraft. She never used the druidcraft spell, so it's like, why would I ever use this? I'll trade this away. What she didn't realize was she was trading away her fey nature, and so when they pass through the portal into the hunting lodge, they get into a combat encounter, and she takes off to fly, and her wings disappear because she's becoming less and less of a fae at this point, so she doesn't have wings anymore, which is, as you might imagine, quite distressing for the character, quite distressing for the player, in fact, to lose out on her wings. But on the flip side, they talk to the people in the hunting lodge, and they discover that there's actually there's tension in the ranks of the cult, and they're able to get one of the people on their side and get this NPC to basically tell them where Resmir has run off to, and to not fight them because this NPC doesn't like Resmir. So they take her advice. They go into the town of Pernast, and they look around for a while before they finally find some wyverns, which they can use to fly up to the Flying Sky Castle, which is the final retreat of Resmir. They fly up to the Flying Sky Castle. They are pursued. They have a high enough head start, or far enough head start, that they can tell the guards when they land that some people will be coming after them who they need to shoot down out of the sky. So they actually trick the guards into killing their pursuers. And then they proceed to basically fail forward through the entire castle. Like they're looking for Resmir. They go into the wrong room. They find a red wizard of Thay, Wrath Modar, who they've actually killed a red wizard before this. They killed one back of the previous castle, but they find Wrath Modar, who is supposed to be an important NPC that lasts the whole time, and they manage to kill him in like one round. Maybe I didn't play him well enough, but they do manage to kill him in one round. And I decided to reward them for that by letting them pick up a deck, a deck that contains many things, which is not part of the original adventure, but I thought it'd be fun, and it turned out to be exactly as fun as I wanted it to be. The fighter drew a couple cards and got a few minor effects that didn't really have any ultimate bearing on events. Nox draws a card, and I'm using a modified deck of many things that includes a full tarot deck, and she gets a card that creates 4 duplicate copies of herself that are opposite alignment to her, antagonistic to her interests, running around trying to cause her problems. So, which is exactly not that specific outcome, but something like that is exactly what I was hoping would happen. Some kind of chaos element. So the deck worked perfectly. It's great. Um, they do manage to find Resmir. They end up killing her, and now they have to deal with the castle proper, um, because the castle has a dragon in it, and the castle has a vampire in it who is allied with the cult, kind of part of the cult, maybe not part of the cult. The dragon and the vampire decide to coordinate, team up, work together. Fortunately, the party is able to ally with a cloud giant who's on the castle for honestly very dumb reasons. Like the cloud giant basically wants all the giants to band together to fight against the dragons. So he's working with the dragons and the cult of the dragon in order to strengthen them so the other giants will see them as a proper threat. I didn't write this part of the adventure. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what's happening. Anyway, it lets the party team up with the cloud giant. They work together. They have a very fun interaction where they're like traveling across this open courtyard. And then the dragon swoops in and like it's a white dragon, so like freezes half of them and is attacking them. And they actually do a pretty good job of fighting it off, but they do have to retreat. They retreat back into a dark room. And that's where the vampire comes in, where she jumps out and she charms one of the PCs, and then is trying to kill the fighter, actually, because the fighter obviously is the biggest in-your-face threat, and is trying to take him down. They manage to push her off and run back out into the light. The dragon had flown away in the interim, and they run up and they take shelter in another room, a room that's able to be arcane locked. One of them had acquired a potion of etherealness, and this at some time previously, drinks the potion, becomes ethereal, is able to walk through walls, and is basically like finding out where all the cultists and all the people are. But he failed his intelligence check to figure out how long the potion was going to last, which means that he got caught again out in the open courtyard. This time at night, so this time it's the vampire that he runs into, and so Max is basically running pell-mell across the courtyard, being chased by a vampire, trying not to get killed. The party does come out and save him. They do manage to save him in time, of course. And then they coordinate with the giant, make a plan to take down the dragon. The plan doesn't go exactly as planned. It does successfully result in them actually killing the dragon. He tries to fly away, but they're able to catch up to him and take him down in midair. And the loss of that last ally means the vampire just leaves them alone. I figured, she doesn't want to die. She wants to live, so she's going to fly away. And that's where we end the Hoard of the Dragon. That's the end of Hoard of the Dragon Queen. They have successfully retrieved the Sky Cow. They have successfully killed Rezmir. That was the goal. They were trying to hunt down Rezmir, figure out what she was doing with all this treasure. They have succeeded in that, and so they have, they hunted her down, killed her, took out a dragon, are now proper heroes, and now are waiting to see what happens next. So at the end, we have a simple job from Leosin that spiraled into them pursuing a half dragon halfway across the world up into a sky tower. They have connections still pending with their archfey patron. Max still owes a favor. Alora still owes her 3 favors and has her name taken from her. Robert has been told that he will get his name back when he dies, so he won't be owned after death. But he still doesn't have his name while he's alive. So, and Nux is losing her Essence, doesn't have her wings, and really would like to fix that. And so we're gonna figure out how they deal with that over the course of the next few weeks. So, if you've listened this far, I appreciate it. I hope that this has been enlightening. I hope that you've enjoyed my storytelling. I hope that this is a good summary of Hoard of the Dragon Queen. I haven't told you everything that happens in there. There's a whole lot of cool stuff. Like, that's just the overview of the story. So if you want to run it for yourself, there's still a lot that you can find out. And then I will try to do maybe weekly videos of campaign diaries for Rise to Tiamat going forward. Until next time, bye.